Hello, BookTube. I have some new arrivals for you. I have 6 books to show you, only one of which I have already read. And I'm saving it for the last. It would be the last thing we look at. The first 2 things that I want to show you are romance novels. I figure, why not? One of them is right in my wheelhouse. For romances, I love historical romances, Regencies, that sort of thing. And I found, I got this. This is An Inconvenient Duke by Anna Harrington. And that is ubiquitous romance cover model Paul Marin on the cover there. And this is, let's see here, Marcus Braddock, former general and newly appointed Duke of Hampton, is back from war. Now, not only is he surrounded by the utterly unbearable ton, that's T-O-N, that's the Regency word for high society, he's mourning the death of his beloved sister, Elise. Marcus believes his sister's death wasn't an accident, and he's determined to learn the truth, starting with Danielle, his sister's beautiful best friend. Danielle is keeping deadly secrets of her own. She has dedicated her life to a charity that helps abused women, the same charity Elise was working for on the night she died. When Danielle's work puts her life in danger, Marcus comes to her rescue, but Danielle may not be the one in need of rescuing. And there you have the 2 of them on a street there like that. A little bit of an unconventional backdrop for a Regency romance novel because it's not pastoral. It's a city street. But I'm always up for a quick historical Regency. But the other of the 2 romances that I want to show you, new arrivals, is contemporary. As I mentioned, Sarah at Steeped in Books, a BookTube channel that is great with romance, likes reading contemporaries. And I all it takes when you're watching someone whose judgment you trust and whose channel you like, all it takes is they're not trying to convince you or convert you to anything. But I'm sure you've experienced this yourself watching BookTube. Watch them enough, enthusing about a certain kind of thing, and you will suddenly think, well, maybe I'll give that a try. Nothing ventured, nothing gained, right? So I have read, thanks to her channel, I have read a lot more contemporary romance than I would ever have done. I have a romance, an entire bookcase of romances right here, right off camera. See? Like that, right there. The things you can do with this tripod. And most of it, 99% of it, is historical. Reflecting that preference. But I got a contemporary. This is by Holly Castillo. It's part of the Texas Navy SEALs series, and it's called A Seal Always Wins. The contemporary romances have this thing with Navy SEALs. I don't know quite what it is. But let's see here. He's got a gun down there, just in case you... Elite Navy SEAL Enrique Phantom Ramirez is trained to expect the unexpected, but his growing feelings for brilliant horse trainer Elena Garcia catch him completely off guard. Phantom needs Elena's help to maintain his SEAL team's cover, more critical than ever now that they've identified a conspiracy of mysterious power brokers in both Mexico and the U.S. But how can he get her to train the ranch's quarter horses without revealing who he really is, and without revealing his need for this woman whose indomitable spirit has captured his heart? So those are the 2 romances for our new arrivals. And then we'll move on to YA. This is coming out in... this is brand new. It came out, the date on it is March the 3rd, so it's probably in your bookstores already. This is a debut, I believe. Yes, this is a debut. This is by Kessia Lupo. It's from Bloomsbury, and it's We Are Blood and Thunder. And it's the author's debut. Good for her. She studied history at Oxford University and creative writing at Bath Spa. She lives in Bristol with her husband and works as a children's book editor, writing in the mornings. How wonderful. All right, so what have we got here? On the edges of a sealed-off city, a chance encounter between 2 girls in the misty woods is about to change the course of everything. Lena is on the run from her home, the Duke's Forest, after being convicted as a mage and sentenced to death. Meanwhile, Constance escaped the forest years before, after her own magical powers were discovered, but now she will do anything to get back inside and reclaim her place as the Duke's daughter. The girls cross paths for only a moment, but that's long enough to set them down paths that will change the dukedom forever. As Lena reaches a safe haven where she can study and develop her powers alongside handsome but mysterious mage Emrys, Constance maneuvers her way back into the home she left behind, unsure whether she trusts the people she once considered her family and friends. All the while, the girls are connected by the dark, terrifying storm clouds that hang over the land and devastate everything in their wake. So, high stakes, very high fantasy debut YA. I rail against YA booktube channels quite a bit, but I don't have anything really against the genre itself. I dislike the current trend from about 2018 on of agents and some publishers allowing what are obviously YA novels to fly under false colors, to be marketed and brought to press as adult fiction. I worry about that, not only because there are going to be plenty of readers who are going to open these things and in 2 seconds know, wait a minute, this isn't adult fiction. This is a YA novel. And I wasn't in the mood for that. I essentially have fallen victim to false advertising. But also because you do that long enough, you're going to adulterate what the standards for both. YA fiction is different from adult contemporary fiction. There are differences. There are tonal and cliche differences, structural differences. There's no harm in saying that. Not one is better or worse than the other. But this looks like straight down the garden path there. So I'm not so much going to worry about that. And since it came out, I didn't realize until I made this video just now that it came out in early March. So I'm overdue to read it. But this next one, I think all the rest of these aren't out yet. Like for instance, the next one is April. So I know that we're safe down here. And this author needs no introduction. This is the new Dean Coons. This is Devoted by Dean Coons, which. I'm just noticing that my copy has in a box, so let's see what we have here. All right, so that's probably what it's going to look like. And what have I got? Anything at all? I've got a box. No. All right. Well, that's okay. Woody Bookman hasn't spoken a word in his 11 years of life. So we have an 11-year-old protagonist, and almost certainly his dog. Right, if it's Dean Coons. Not when his father died in a freak accident. Not when his mother, Megan, tells him she loves him. For Megan, keeping her boy safe and happy is what matters. But Woody believes a monstrous evil was behind his father's death and now threatens him and his mother. And he's not alone in his thoughts. An ally unknown to him is listening. A uniquely gifted dog, okay, with a heart as golden as his breed, Kip is devoted beyond reason to people. When he hears the boy who communicates like he does, without speaking, Kip knows he needs to find him before it's too late. Woody's fearful suspicions are taking shape. A man driven by a malicious evil has set a depraved plan into motion, and he's coming after Woody and his mother. The reasons are primal, his powers are growing, and he's not alone. Only a force greater than evil can stop what's coming next. So this is going to be, well, at least from that description, a fairly standard Dean Koontz boy and his dog versus the forces of the supernatural novel. I have read a few of those. I've read a lot of Dean Koontz actually, and they aren't bad at all. This is a very competent storyteller. It just boxes, I tell you, nothing ever goes back right. Nothing ever goes back inside the box. I don't even know what I'm doing wrong here. Oh, God, where's Mark Richardson when you need him? No, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. This will not go back in the box. So I will. No, this just will not work. So what I have to do is open the box and the back, put the book in, and then reinsert the tab of the box, which is ridiculous. That is just ridiculous. But you do what you got to do. All right, there we go. Okay, so Dean Koontz is Devoted. That is our next one. And the next one is a murder mystery thriller type series by an author who I've read some of his work. I don't keep up, and I should, because the books that I've read I really liked. I think this is a March release. Or maybe early April. Okay, this is early April. This is The Last Hunt by Dion Meyer. South African thriller. Internationally acclaimed crime writer Dion Meyer returns with this book in early April. With this new thriller featuring investigative superstars Benny Greisel and Vaughn Cupido, Meyer makes a brave and powerful statement about the pervasive corruption that has stolen so much from South Africa, his native country. And they always are fairly styled the same way, the covers of these books. When a cold case dossier lands on Captain Benny Greisel's desk, he and his partner, Vaughn Cupido, fellow members of the Hawks elite police unit in South Africa, reluctantly set to work reviewing the evidence of the disappearance and possible murder of ex-cop Johnson Johnson on the world's most luxurious train line. Two fellow travelers might have the answers Greisel and Cupido need, but they seem to have disappeared into thin air, and the few clues that exist suggest a cover-up. And this is, a lot of you are going to know this author. In fact, a lot of you will know him better than I do. He is an internationally acclaimed, prize-winning author of 12 thrillers, including The Woman in the Blue Cloak, Fever, Icarus, Cobra, 7 Days, and the Barry Award-winning 13 Hours. His books have been published in 27 languages, and he lives in South Africa. This comes out in early April. It'll be too late for March Mystery Madness, but that's okay. I'll still gobble it up. And once again, as usual, if I can find any old pertinent reviews, I will include them. I think there's a possibility that I've reviewed Dean Coons in the past. I feel certain that I've reviewed a Dion Meyer, at least one. So it's stuff like that. And then we have the last one. The last book is History, and I have actually read it. I don't know if we've seen it on this channel, but I was blown away by it, and so I want to share it with you. It comes out in late March, I believe. Yes, this comes out in late March. This is by Claudio Sant, and it is Unworthy Republic: The Dispossession of Native Americans and the Road to Indian Territory. This book is a powerful account of the expulsion of the 1830s of 80,000 Native Americans from the eastern half of the United States. Moving beyond the familiar story of the Trail of Tears, historian Claudio Sant explores how expulsion became national policy, passing in Congress by only 5 votes. How speculators stole indigenous lands in a storm of fraud and violence, and how the federal bureaucracy, overwhelmed by the logistics of deportation, failed at every turn and finally sanctioned the extermination of native peoples who still remain in Georgia and Florida. In unparalleled detail, the author exposes the economic, bureaucratic, and military forces brought to bear on indigenous families, underscoring the paternalism, the racism, and greed that drove so many of the major players in this drama. The leading architects of expulsion include not just familiar faces like Andrew Jackson, but also Wall Street bankers, Southern slave owners, and federal bureaucrats who cut budgets, refused food requests, and medicine requests from the comfort of an office building just west of the White House. Indigenous leaders such as Osceola, Black Hawk, and John Ross, as well as thousands of unnamed Native women and men, pushed for their rights and decent treatment and waged war when denied them at every turn. And the author is the Richard B. Russell Professor of American History at the University of Georgia. And this is magnificent. It's incredibly grim, but it's magnificent. Especially the through line running through here is the nobility of all of these people, their leaders and the people that they led, in the face of naked duplicity. They did it right. They did it the right way. They were approached by a people that called themselves lawful, that called themselves law-abiding, upright, moral. And in the face of dispossession, which is illegal anyway, in the face of dispossession, these people said, okay, if you mean to do the right thing, then we must have a treaty. And we must lay down in legal terms for all time what you mean and what you don't mean, what you will and won't do. And then watched as those treaties were violated, one after another, after another, after another. So it's brutal reading. It reminded me of the historical novelist Dale Van Every, a long time ago, about 60 years ago, 50 years ago, wrote a book called Dispossession, which is brilliant on the same subject. It's the exact same subject, exact same major players. It's an angrier book than this, but in a way, the collected intellectualism of this book makes it more devastating. So I believe that it will probably become a minor classic on the subject, certainly the final word on the subject. So later in the month, this is going to be in your bookstores. If you're interested in the subject, I cannot recommend it strongly enough. If you want it for your library or you want to reserve it, you're gonna be engrossed by it. I can't say that you'll enjoy it. Obviously, there's no glimmer of anything that's enjoyable in this, especially since the minute you close it, you realize that it's just a history of something that's still ongoing. The treaties that were worked out with these people are legally binding. They are still in effect. If bad actors in 1891 decide, even if they're in the United States government, if they decide, well, we're just going to break this treaty, we're just going to ignore it, that doesn't invalidate the treaty. That makes them bad actors. And when they grow old and die, the treaty is still in effect. And it's up to a new generation to decide, well, we have a choice. We can either revert to honoring this thing, which is a binding legal document that was entered into knowingly by both parts, or we can just continue to honor the breach. We can just continue to honor the soiling of the treaty, and we're going to do that instead. Anyway, again, a grim subject. I promise that next time I make a wholehearted recommendation, it will be on a happier subject, but the unhappy subjects are important too. So I want to recommend this. So that is our new arrivals. We have Unworthy Republic, about Indian removal. We have The Last Hunt by Dion Meyer, a South African novel. We have Devoted by Dean Coons, the latest horror thriller of the forces of evil aligned against a boy and his dog. We have We Are Blood and Thunder, a YA premiere, a YA debut, and 2 romance novels. One historical, and that is An Inconvenient Duke by Anna Harrington. And the other is A Seal Always Wins by Holly Castillo. One contemporary, one historical. So there you go. Those are some new arrivals for your consideration. So I'm going to wrap this up, but I'll be back. Thank you, BookTube.